Good afternoon and welcome to The Situation. I am Joel Ford, and it is my pleasure to be with you this afternoon, this evening, to bring to you the next segment in The Situation. This evening, I have with me a good friend of mine, Dan Barry. I'm going to give Dan the opportunity to introduce himself and just give us a little bit of background about who he is and what he's been up to lately. The other person who is not here at this particular time, a gentleman with the BLEXIT movement out of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, will be here shortly. His name is Osiga. If you look at the screen, you will notice that Pierre Wilson was supposed to be here with us this evening. He will not be able to join us this time, but he will make it some other time. You know, the BLEXIT movement, as I understand it, started by Candace Owens. And Dan, it's a real interesting thing that we have going on in our politics today as it relates to blacks, African Americans in the Republican Party as well as within the Democratic Party. And so I don't want to get too deep into it right now. I want to take opportunity to talk to you and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Joel. And it's great to be here. I
Absolutely.
really appreciate it. It's been fun to reconnect with you. I think we spent a lot of time together in the last 60 days.
Yes, we have.
And I thank you for the opportunity and great invitation to come over. And I can't wait to hear what he has to say because
his name is Osiga, and I got to get his last name. I wish Pierre was going to be here. If Pierre is listening to us online, I want him to make sure that he chimes in, and we'll be able to interact with him online as we go throughout this particular show. But right now, it's all about you.
Oh goodness!
Tell us, tell us a little bit about yourself, and then how did we meet, and what is that connection?
I don't even know how to start. I'm a rarity. I'm an 8th-generation Charlottean.
Okay.
My family moved to this region on the Presbyterian wagon train from Philadelphia, late 1600s, early 1700s into Cabarrus County. Mecklenburg County back then was the land between the rivers, the Rocky River and the Catawba River, and it was controlled by Indians. So that's when we got here. I am, like I mentioned, a native Mecklenburg County resident. I was educated in Mecklenburg County public schools. Went off to boarding school late and then went to college at the College of Charleston, where I have a degree in political science and minors in international economics and international studies. Came back to Charlotte like all of us and was working in politics. You probably remember Alec McMillan, congressman. Yes. He followed Jim Martin into the U.S. House. I worked for Alec for 2 cycles and delved into politics, was very involved in the President Bush election in 1988.
Okay.
And
so that's Bush 1 or Bush 2?
Bush 1, 1988.
Okay.
That was Bush 1,
right.
Lee Atwater.
Okay.
So,
all right.
In the Southern strategy, which was the big Super Saturday primary back then, I was a college student and had a blast doing that as a college kid. Lots of fun memories in there. But came back to Charlotte and got involved in partisan politics in the early 90s. With the Republican Party, was on the board for the Young Republicans, all that kind of stuff. And then, as happens to all of us, got married, had children, got a job, and that just kind of stepped back. And about 15 years ago, we moved to Union County.
Okay.
I don't remember the city council person's name, but there was a tax issue, and he made the comment, well, if you don't want to pay the tax, I think it was over the arena, then don't let the door hit you on the way out. I can't remember who that was. And we sold our house within about 30 days and packed up and moved to Union County.
Wow.
And it has been fantastic. I was served on the Weddington Town Council and was mayor pro tem there, ran for Congress in 2012.
So let's put a pause right there. So your business background, what do you do professionally? What industry are you in?
Oh, well, fantastic. Let's go back there. I am in the insurance business. I'm a 3rd-generation insurance professional. My dad and I have 2 brothers in the business. I work for NFP, insurance brokerage firm, $1.5 billion firm here in Charlotte, and I run their executive benefits practice.
So let me track this with you. So you're a family guy. You grew up in Charlotte. You moved to Union County. You're in the insurance industry, but you ran for Congress. Why?
Well, we got to back up because we moved to Union County. I joined a church. then I ran for office.
Okay,
So
you joined the church.
I'm an elder in a Presbyterian church, and
So
that's a big part of my life, and I don't want to just glance over that. So
I respect that because my faith is a big part of my life as well. And so you love the Lord.
Absolutely.
All right, so we can agree with that. And so now you get this revelation that you want to get into politics. You want to become elected to the U.S. Congress. What was that epiphany? What motivated you to do that?
At the time, so this would be back in. Well, I've always had the bug, right? I was kind of born with it, I think, and it's a big part of my life. And we're called to public service, and that I was very passionate about that. I wanted to put a voice to economic issues that we were facing at the time. I was not a proponent of President Obama's, obviously, and was very hard on some of his economic policies, followed by Obamacare. Being in the insurance business and representing our clients, it was a huge challenge, and it's coming to bear today. And then the budget issue was just exploding around us. And if you go back and look at the material that we were producing, there's a ton of it about taxes, retirement reform, healthcare reform, budget reform, all of those economic issues.
So what year did you run for Congress?
2012.
So 2012. And in what district did you run in?
I was in 9. So
Okay.
that was Robert Pittenger won the election. He was in a runoff with Jim Pendergraft, and Andy Doolin was in that race. Edwin Peacock was in that race.
So what I want to make the connection on here, Dan, is public policy, business, and your family, and help me make that that connection for those of us, for those who are listening, about, again, what motivated you, and then what did you want to see in Washington that you were not seeing, other than the economic issues that you just articulated that you were concerned about?
Well, we were coming out of the Sue Meyer era, and I was passionate that we needed somebody to go to Washington and fight for the average voter. That we were having extraordinary challenges from the regulatory environment. Businesses were being hurt. We were coming out of the recession. You had the Fed trying to loosen up money. You had the regulators tightening up money. We couldn't get the economy started, and we needed somebody that had some business acumen, that run a business, with all due respect to my lawyer friends, not another lawyer in Washington, that met a payroll, that wrote what is the old sign? We sign the front of the check, not just the back of the check, and understand what that is, and are willing to go fight for everybody, not just special interest.
Excellent. So one of the things that got me into politics is the need for what I consider to be common sense public policy, right? I've always been an advocate for the average guy because, in my view, big business or those who are wealthy always seem to know how to figure it out. And so being a part of the small business community then and now, it is a challenge for a lot of businesses, depending upon the industry that you're in terms of the regulatory environment, which I don't think that the average person listening, if you're not in a leadership position, or if you are not responsible for an organization, the impact that heavy regulation can have on a business, right? In terms of having to follow the regs, in terms of the taxes associated with it. So what I think, and help me articulate to the listeners, what does deregulation mean? Because that's a big talking point among conservatives and Republicans. And so when you hear deregulation, what do you think that could do for small business and business in general to spur on job growth, and not only spurring on the job growth, but creating an environment so that workers can be successful too?
It's great questions, and there's a lot in there to unpack. And I think the memory I have is the line, I want to operate, and we need policy to function where Main Street and Wall Street intersect. It can't just be about Wall Street, nor can it always be just about Main Street or the Hamlet. And I think what we're seeing in North Carolina and across this country right now, in the economic boom that we've had in the last 4 or 5 years, and particularly with the Carolina comeback, is that we are at full employment. 3.2% unemployment in Gaston County right now, 3.1 in Union, 3.45 in Mecklenburg County. And so when you begin to strip off the regulatory burden on all of our businesses, it provides for the acquisition of capital, so it makes the owners of businesses more easily able to go out and borrow money to invest and grow in their businesses. When they grow their businesses, their employment goes up. They're adding bodies to run these businesses. Their payrolls go up because as you reach full employment, so 3.5% is full employment, then just pure economics, wages grow. And so we begin to see the pressure on wage growth. Now, you got to be careful because when you start to have wage growth, you get inflation. I'm giving you a lot of economics here.
Well,
but
no,
this
no,
is
you
about,
are, but
I want to back into something really important. When you strip out regulation and you lower taxes, it inspires business owners to invest. Now, that's all the Wall Street talk. Well, the Main Street talk is when I grow that business, I'm putting people back to work. And when we're putting people back to work or allowing them to improve their condition, economic development, economic growth. When I talk about economic development, I'm saying a wage earner earns more money. He changes that family's condition.
And so this is where I want to go with that. On the left, we've got a big push to deal with income inequality. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that the left will say is that we need to raise the minimum wage. Well, first of all, and I am a Democrat, by the way, I do not believe in the minimum wage, primarily from a philosophical standpoint. I don't want the minimum of anything. I think that if we're shooting for the minimum, that is the floor, right? That is the lowest that you can get. And who can really live on $15 an hour? $15 an hour would be nice for somebody right now. And don't get me wrong. And I hear those right now who want to jump across the screen and come at me. So if you're making minimum wage now, which is what, what's
I have no idea, to be honest with you.
And it's sad that neither one of us knows what minimum wage is. So if you know what minimum wage is, somebody type it in and let us know. But obviously it's not $15 an hour. So it would be more. But again, that still does not begin to meet the needs of a family that's making $15 an hour in the city of Charlotte as it relates to the cost of living. So what is your philosophy? What is your take on income inequality? And how can we as a community, right, because you live in Union and most of us,
Charlotte,
but you work in Charlotte, but we also have a country where income inequality is still a major issue. Now, I've got my own take on it, but I want to hear what your take is on it.
Income equality is a real issue. It is a real challenge. And my take on it is the best solution is a private solution, not a government solution. So when you raise the minimum wage, sure, it sounds good and it feels good, but at the end of the day, that person working in a fast food restaurant or in an hourly wage job in a hotel in the service business, their life is not going to change. If we would free up and allow companies to invest by reducing the burden, regulatory burden, or lowering taxes and allowing the private sector to do that, I believe wages will explode beyond a $15 minimum wage or whatever the minimum wage would grow to, because we're empowering you to better your condition. You make the choice based on the private sector because of your education, background, and experience. There's a whole nother issue that we can get into here about education and justice reform and the impact that has on and I don't want to get dragged into that yet, but I think at the end of the day, on the conservative side, we're going to say the government does not always have the best solution. Whereas our noble opposition tends to say there is a societal ill and the government needs to fix it. Sometimes the societal ill may have been created.
Business owners are going to, quote unquote, do the right thing and then pay their workers more. Ideally, yes. And so I still am a proponent of deregulation. I'm still a proponent of making smart regulation so that businesses can thrive, and then eventually the leadership will do the right thing by way of increasing wages on their own without government forcing them to do so.
Absolutely.
We've seen that happen already with corporations like Costco.
We call them the Trump bonus right now, but you know.
and that's fine. You can call them that. But my point is there is a philosophy that certain businesses have, even though you have a semi-skilled or low-skilled worker working at an environment, they believe that a worker should have a quote-unquote livable wage, which is either $15 or higher. And so I really commend those businesses who have that philosophy. And I think that when you patronize certain businesses that have that philosophy, those workers seem to, in my opinion, put out a different kind of, a better, more high quality service and a better product.
And they're more motivated.
And so, again, that's private industry doing that on its own. But there are certain other industries that want to thrive off of and make their living off of a minimum wage. And I would like to see those businesses, when they do get the tax cuts, when they do have industry deregulation, do a better job by their workers. And so I digress and I say this. I believe that we have to help our citizens, those folks who are in our community, who are working these low-wage jobs, because right now you talk about unemployment, be it at record lows, and a lot of discussion can be had who can get the credit for that. So normally the last man on the job is, and so that's President Trump. And so he's taking credit for it, even though you got some people who want to try to give Obama credit for it. I'm not going to say completely that the Obama administration doesn't deserve some credit, but at the end of the day, the economy is still thriving and booming, and Trump is in the White House. So I say this to say we have to do a better job of connecting families, those families who want to work, with better paying jobs rather than relying on the government to dictate to us what our minimum wage is. Because, again, there are tons of jobs right now that are going unfilled that pay more than a minimum wage. And so if we could do a better job, if government wants to help, government can help identify where the jobs are and then help match up the people with those opportunities that are going to naturally pay more, especially when we know that there is a deficit of workers to fill these open jobs.
I am so glad you said that, because one of the things I'm most passionate about, and you'll hear if you go to my Facebook page or any of this stuff, I write a little bit about it, is I believe that we as a society today are doing a little bit of an injustice to suggest that everybody that finishes high school needs to go get a 4-year degree. That the community college system in the state is a very powerful and underappreciated organization. And industries leverage against our community college system to say, I need X. I need welders. I need plumbers. I need electricians. I need bricklayers. There is honor in laying brick. Not everybody needs to go be an engineer. And I'll give you a great case. Craig Horn, legislator from Union County, is a very good friend of mine, and I had a conversation, frankly, at a coffee probably on a Friday. You were there, and he said, do you understand that we have 50,000 licensed plumbers in North Carolina? Do you know what the average age is?
55 or 58.
58. That they anticipate within the next 5 years, that number will drop to, I think Craig told me, somewhere around 30,000. The average income for a starting plumber today is not $15 an hour.
Right.
It's $100,000. There are plumbing firms.
Whoa.
There are plumbing firms in Charlotte
The starting pay for a plumber.
10 jobs posted. I'm not going to mention the company's name because they'll get 100 people tonight. But and I don't know that all those jobs hadn't been filled. Starting wages at $100,000. They cannot find them. Driving trucks, laying bricks, wiring houses. These are not menial jobs, but we need to do a better job of, in my opinion, getting into our school system. And in the 10th and 11th grade, I'm not saying you have a qualification test to get to college. This is not Japan. But go in and say, there's a way for you to get an associate's degree and graduate from an associate's program at 20 and be prepared to go get a real job and be prepared to have a meaningful wage. And I'll tell you, $100,000 is a lot more than a meaningful wage. And then be able to begin building your family and controlling your life and your destiny. And what happens when you have mandated minimum wages, with all due respect to my friends, you end up getting sucked into that trap. And if you're already out, if you're post-graduation, if you're struggling to get into school to better yourself, if you're only making $15 an hour, when will you have time? You can't. You got to work 2 or 3 jobs to make that happen. We need to catch folks when we can deliver that result and have the greatest impact.
So in the era of Trump, everything Trump, all things Trump, if you take a look at any major media outlet, it is all about impeachment. And so you and I were on another network last week, and we talked about, and I got a little bit of pushback from the comment that I made as it relates to the impeachment process and how thirsty that I said that Democrats looked in trying to pursue impeachment of President Trump. I also stated, for the record, that I do believe that Congress, one of their responsibilities is they have the ability to investigate, right? So if there's a claim or an allegation of wrongdoing, I do believe that they should do that. But the circus, the politicization of the impeachment process, I think is a mistake by Democrats. And then secondly, if you take a look at the fact that even if they are able to do something in the House, it's dead on arrival in the Senate. And so my admonishment to Democrats were, instead of pursuing this circus of an impeachment process, you need to go out, organize, and beat Trump at the ballot box, where nobody really wanted to take on that thing. They're so caught up right now dealing with these presidential debates, and we can get in that to a little bit later.
Well,
But I want to talk to you about, in this era of Trump, give me your take on President Trump, and then what do you think that he's doing good, and what are the things you think he can improve upon? And don't just tell me he needs to stay off Twitter, because all you Republicans say that.
You and I have had that conversation. Somebody needs to rip his telephone out of his hand and get him off social media and Twitter. But in his defense on that, the media is not giving him a square deal, so he has to find a way to get around the media to get to the voter. And he is a disruptor his entire life, and he has disrupted that process. And the media doesn't like it because they want to be able to control messaging, and they sell TV time, and that's what makes their business function. I think you got to remember that Donald Trump is a reality TV star, and the American people elected a reality TV star, at the consummate disruptor, to be president of the United States.
I'm smiling.
I know, but I'm gonna get smacked down for what I'm getting ready to say. He runs the Oval Office like Trump Enterprises. He's not a 40-year politician that grew up in the city council, county commission, state house, ran for Congress, did 2 or 3 terms, and then ran for president and got elected.
That's right.
He injected himself right in at the top and said, we're going to roll with this. And he's managed the office as he's burned through his chiefs of staff. He really has. And I feel sorry for Mick Mulvaney. We know him. He's a friend.
Yeah.
He's got a tiger by the tail. And Trump's behavior, language, etc., I don't know anybody that's really apologizing for that. I think most people are saying, we love his economic policies. He's doing what he promised the voters he would do. He is a disruptor, but he only knows how to do it Trump's way. And that is jumping on toes, and people that when you get your toes stepped on, it's a little uncomfortable.
It's going to be interesting to see how that translate into 2020 as he comes up for re-election. I will say this to you. I think that the Democrats have a challenge as it relates to the candidates that they have up. I think anything other than a Joe Biden type of candidate, I think a Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders is going to present a unique opportunity and challenge to the voters of America. And I think that Trump has a higher probability of winning against somebody like that. The issue, and I said this publicly and I'll say it again, the problem with Joe Biden is that the younger Democratic presidential candidates are making him look old, and they're making him look slow. And so, is he a good man? I think that he is. But primaries, as you know, can be very, very brutal. Attacks can come from within and on your own. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that process. But Trump has also ignited in a lot of citizens and a lot of Americans this outrage that I think is not healthy and it's not productive. I mean, at the end of the day, whether you like President Trump or not, and I said this too as a Democrat when the Republicans were attacking Obama. He was duly elected, not once but twice, but he is the president of the United States. And I just think that somewhere along the lines, Dan, that we've got off course with the way that we talk to one another.
Amen.
Especially in politics. And people keep forgetting that we've sent people, we elect people, Republicans and Democrats, and I wish that we had some more independents in there, but primarily we are a two-party system. We elect people to go to work for us. And so you may not like the man sitting across from you. By the way, we happen to like each other. But you may not
couldn't tell.
But you may not like the person sitting next to you or across from you, but you have an obligation to work together. Dan, the problem right now is they're not working with each other.
So I think there's a lot in there, and so let's back up and have a little history lesson. The idea that Congress people come home to their district every weekend is actually a new phenomenon. Historically, when a member of Congress was elected, they moved to Washington, D.C. Then when the session was over, they came home. They stayed for 6 months. Then when the fields needed to be harvested, they came home, harvested, and 18 months later, they would go back. So I'm going back 200 years. As recently as the mid-'80s, members of Congress were elected. They bought a house in Northern Virginia. They moved their families to Virginia with them or into the Capitol. Their children went to public schools or to private schools in Washington, D.C. And as you and I have talked about, it's hard to hate face-to-face, right? There's none of this face-to-face. Members of Congress, as recently as the mid-'90s, were at PTA meetings together. They lived in the same apartment buildings. Their kids went to school together. They're at Little League games together. And so all of a sudden, Joel and Dan Barry are standing there drinking a bottle of water at a Little League baseball game, and we step off and we say, man, we got this tax package. We got to figure out how to get this done. And you and I are having a reasonable conversation without the television cameras, without the majority leader or the minority leader beating us over the head to stay in line, and you get a deal done. The reality is, in my opinion, where's the honor? Where's the leadership? We're electing people to go do a job and to do it honorably and to treat the institutions with honor. And I would ask, as you just said, I've joked on Facebook today, the vitriol, we need to lower the rhetoric. What happened to the big words in public policy? What happened to the reality that when you are elected to the North Carolina General Assembly, to the City of Charlotte City Council, or the Board of County Commissioners, you are there to do a job. You are there to represent the entire voters of the community which selected you, and you are to do it with honor. When I show up at a city council meeting and somebody's wearing a sweatshirt, that's an elected person, it makes me nuts. They are dishonoring the institution, and they're disrespecting the people that elected them.
Look, you're preaching to the choir with me, and you're talking about a guy who had a brief 6-year career in the General Assembly that had a notable reputation for working across the aisle. And one of the things, Dan, that I recognized real early is that when I went to Raleigh, and I represented at the time Senate District 38, which when I did a evaluation of the district, right? So the City of Charlotte Senate District 38 has the most crime, the highest unemployment, underemployment, the most failing, and the most underperforming public schools in Mecklenburg County. And so you want me to go to Raleigh and not have a conversation with the majority and with the leadership who control everything about Raleigh. And even though, and this is what the average person doesn't get and doesn't understand, even though that they've lost a supermajority, they still control the process. They control the budgeting process. Heck, they even still control where offices are being assigned. And so
moving day.
It's frustrating to me because you look at Mecklenburg and how we're growing with the number of challenges that we have with affordable housing. And then most recently, we have this big demand and push for the arts through an arts tax. I'm saying to you.
And the Silver Line, don't leave it out.
The transportation is a whole nother bucket issue, big ticket item. I'm saying to you, with as many needs as the City of Charlotte has, and with a $25 billion state budget with a surplus of over $630 million, this is additional dollars. The folks from Mecklenburg County are not even at the table to have a discussion about what's best not only for the City of Charlotte, but for the region. And I say this to you primarily because of hyper-partisanship, because one side or the other is trying to do the gaming and trying to see who's going to one-up one another, when in reality, back home, nothing's getting done. And let's be clear, that burden now, because we are not drawing on our state resources, that burden falls on the taxpayer and the property owner.
The local taxpayer. I think what I was going to add on and antagonizes the General Assembly. It's not just that they're not getting along with, they do things, excuse me, to exacerbate the problem. I'll go to your district, and I can't remember exactly where it is. I think it's from Beatty's Ford Road all the way back down to Wilkinson.
It's northwest Charlotte up by Mountain Island Lake area, and it hugs southwest Charlotte by the airport all the way
Does it go all the way to
down by
Pine?
Airwood. It doesn't do
Doesn't
that
get to
anymore.
Steel Creek, but-
No, not anymore.
So, and I know they flipped and flopped
Right.
it, and now they're probably back a little bit. But I think it's important, and you and I have talked about this. What can Joel Ford or Mary Belk or Craig Horn or the new members, and of course we got an election coming up, do to add value and improve the condition for their district, all within the guise of the North Carolina General Assembly? As a member of the House or the Senate, you are not a municipal politician. You represent your district in state objectives.
That's right.
But at the end of the day, what are you doing to support improvement of the human condition of your constituents? Are you helping them get a better education? You commented about drugs and crime. What are you doing to help the city of Charlotte deal with the issues on the Upper West Side of our county? And I don't know those issues. You and I've talked about. I don't live there. It's outside of my.
But my point is, you don't have to live in the district to know that you have one of the fastest growing counties in the state, right? And the reality is, there are needs that have to be leveraged on a federal and state level. We are allowing our local elected officials off the hook, all under the guise of, well, they're Republicans. I don't care who you are. We need to figure out how we can leverage resources for the betterment for our community and to help improve our quality of life.
So Senator Berger and Speaker Moore and I'll say this specifically about Berger. People think the governor is the most powerful person in the state. Let me make this clear. Phil Berger is the most powerful person in the state. There are only 50 members of that chamber, and 28 of them, I think, today are Republicans.
And so 28 is a lot easier to deal with than a majority over in the House, which could be
62
or whatever
61.
that number. That's exactly right. So the average person doesn't understand that, right? And so again, I go back to that $25 billion budget that basically, when it boils down to it, you probably got, well, you'll have two people in the room after the leadership of both chambers of all of those committees. Say what they're going to say and try to do what they're going to do, and then the hard decisions are done. Somebody's going to have to sit down and cut a deal. And right now, you're talking about Senator Phil Berger and Representative Speaker Tim Moore.
That's exactly right. Now, let's look at the blue wave and what happened in Mecklenburg County. The last man standing was Dan Bishop.
Right.
And so as frustrating as it was for the Republicans to watch that happen, what also happened was Mecklenburg County lost the ability to mediate and to negotiate with the North Carolina General Assembly. As you and I talked about last week, with highway construction and transportation funding, they're only going to show up with 10% of the bill. There's more money there, but you have to be willing to go and fight for it. And you know what? That means that you got to help. You cannot stand at the wall and throw rocks at the opposition and expect to get anything back. And that is a lesson that the Republicans learned for 150 years when the Democrats controlled the General Assembly and the governor's mansion.
It's amazing to me that history repeats itself and that a lot of people, especially on the Democratic Party side, forget that Democrats were in control for over 100 years.
And broke us.
With the exception, it did. I mean, financially, it broke us. With the exception of one or two breaks in the 80s.
Jim Martin was
Democrats
governor.
were in control. And so now that the Republicans are in control, and I'm going to give you another example, right? So people talk about the supermajority in Raleigh. Nobody's talking about the supermajorities in Charlotte, right? On the school board, the county commission is all Democrat, and then you got a supermajority of Democrats in the city council.
So I've been all over redistricting, and my friends are now telling me I need to find another bone. I got to let this one go. Somebody challenged me on social media either today or yesterday about it, and I said, if you're going to be such an extraordinary advocate for nonpartisan redistricting committees, how come you haven't said that about the city of Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, Wake County, Raleigh, the school board? Because clearly today Republicans are grossly underrepresented given their electoral support in Mecklenburg and Wake County. I just use those as an example. But that's not what the Constitution says. And that's what I believe. And however, I think that in Charlotte's particular case, now I live in a county that's all Republican, but in Charlotte's particular case, Ed Driggs and Tarek Bakari have done as good a job as you can do in a severe minority.
So,
you know, when you're at 48-52,
right,
there's wiggle room. When you're at 211 or whatever the number is, you are an odd man out.
Trust me, I know what a supermajority looks like, and then being a minority party and trying to work with it to get something done. The only last point issue is that we've got to figure out a different way, no matter who is in leadership, to figure out what's being done for our local communities. And so you mentioned redistricting. I brought up a map, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about this redistricting map. But I'm pleased to say that we do have our folks. The gentleman in from the BLEXIT, and so
come on in.
We'll give an opportunity to come on in. So let me give him an opportunity to come on in, and then. But I want you to start. I want you to talk about this map, and then give him the opportunity to get himself.
So
together.
we'll back up. So if you want to fire some questions at me, we can. I'm assuming your audience is mostly our area, the 9th and 12th congressional.
Well,
districts.
they're all over. My audience is.
Oh, you're a superstar.
Well, I don't know about superstar, but it is worldwide.
Oh my
Seriously.
goodness, that you have a cousin overseas somewhere watching you. That's what's going on. So
actually, he's not a cousin, but he is overseas.
All right, let's back up for a second. So we saw not a monumental change, but some shifts in the way our districts are. So the western part of North Carolina stays the same. Virginia Fox lives up here in Watauga, Ashe County area. Her district used to run over this way, and McHenry was down here. Now her district runs from Virginia to South Carolina through Gaston, Cleveland, and Rutherford counties. That's pay attention to that long term. 10th district is now running all the way up to Virginia. Mecklenburg, the 12th district, winds a little bit further around Mint Hill, is now in the 12th district. Union County and
so you're saying the 12th now goes all the way up into Mint Hill?
It comes all the way around. That is Independence Boulevard.
Okay.
So that precinct in Matthews that crosses Independence Boulevard, where the Americana restaurant is still in the 9th district. And then it weaves around, and you have to come and look at the larger one. This is a split precinct, and split precinct to kind of see how they do it.
So did the 12th change a lot?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
So,
all right.
But the important thing to remember is fair and equal, right?
Right.
The Democrats are arguing balanced.
Right.
The Constitution says fair and equal. And so the Republicans, like the Democrats before, stuck to the mantra that we had to use 2010 census data, not new census data. And so when you look at that, we have 733,499 people to an individual.
Okay.
In every single district. So it's very difficult to do. If you go back, as I've done, and you've seen my maps, we like to pull out I like to call it the Mel White district, where it was 30 yards wide on I-85 North, connecting some of our urban communities. And you and I have had the conversation. Under the Voting Rights Act, we were instructed to create a predominantly minority district, which was done. It has now been overridden by the districts that we have today. What's interesting is in the 8-5 redistricting model that we have now, Wake County, by voter turnout during the elections, Wake County and Guilford County, Forsyth County, which is Mark Walker and George Holdings district, now lean much more heavily to the Democratic Party. Interesting, David Price's district, which was very heavy Democratic district, has pulled back a little bit and looking to be, it is not a competitive district, but it's not as democratic as it used to be. But anyway, I've taken you way in the weeds on that.
Well, no, we're going to get back to redistricting because there's some nuances associated with it that I want to talk about, and I'm glad you're going to still be here.
I'm not leaving. I want to stay for the show.
But I want to welcome our new guest, and please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background before we get into the main topic. So I want to hear from you and make sure that I learn who you are. And first of all, let me say welcome to the situation. And I'm Joel Ford.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
You too, man.
Yeah. All right, so my name is Osiga Kaku. I am the Charlotte leader for BLEXIT, North Carolina. BLEXIT, as you know, the Black Exit. As far as you know, politically, filling in for Pierre. He's our state director, field director. And here to talk about BLEXIT and answer any questions y'all might have.
Well, no, we're going to talk about it, but again,
okay,
I
awesome.
want to know who you are.
Okay, awesome.
What's your background? Where did you grow up?
Awesome,
and so what's the origin of your name and your? Give me your first name again.
Osiga.
Osiga.
Yeah,
I like
Osi
it
for short. Yeah.
OC.
Yeah.
Okay, OC.
Now, parents are Nigerian immigrants. They came to Greensboro. My dad came on a scholarship to study agriculture. Then he switched over to nursing, to get his green card back in like the 80s or so. And I wasn't alive then.
Okay.
Yeah, but and then I grew up, born and raised Greensboro, North Carolina.
Okay.
Went to UNC Charlotte. Then after that, I was working a regular job, and somehow I got into politics around like 2016.
Whoa, man! Whoa,
yeah.
man! That's real fast.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you grew up in Greensboro. Did you go to public schools?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you went to UNC Charlotte. What'd you major in?
Business administration.
Business administration.
Yeah.
So you live in the city of Charlotte now.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Do you have a family? You're single?
Yeah, single. I'm a bachelor right now.
So you are available, ladies.
Oh, Lord.
All those who are, man, look, the audience is wide, man. Hey, this could be a good thing for you, or it could not be a good thing. But no, seriously. So I think it's important for people who are listening to understand who you are and what your background is. And so, when did you get into politics? Were you originally a Democrat and then you went Republican, or?
Yeah, good question. So I kind of grew up, coming from, when your family comes from a third world country that was, destroyed by politics and corruption, you tend to follow it more and have, be more thankful for the American system and the freedom, that Americans have, especially when you've achieved the American dream, coming, from, a third world country. So my dad and my family, they've always been interested in politics. So I grew up always watching that from the, the Clinton days to the Bush era to the Obama era. And automatically you're kind of, Democrat because you come from, socialist thinking countries that believe in that. So automatically you're going to come. It's like by default you're a Democrat unless you come and then you believe in capitalism and you're a big fan of America and you come. But that's rare cases. So
let me ask you this.
Yeah.
So did you ever work on anybody's campaign? Did you ever volunteer politically?
Yeah. Right now I'm working on.
No. I'm talking about before BLEXIT.
Before BLEXIT, I helped out with Dan Bishop's campaign a little bit, advocating for him. I helped out with the First Step Act. I was a big advocate for that. Even like prepped some lobbyists before they went, to Washington and speak to people like Ted Cruz about that. Been a part of Turning Point, PragerU, that sort.
Okay.
That's how I got my.
So were you involved politically when you're on the campus of UNC Charlotte or afterwards?
No, not at all.
Okay. So what was and Dan, you can get some of this.
What
too.
was the switch?
No. What was the lightning rod for you? Because you were not politically
Good
active
question,
on campus, but then something happened. I mean, what happened?
That's a good question. So what happened was, I'm a big believer in business and entrepreneurship, and I love capitalism as far as that. So I've always had a love for that, and also as being a numbers guy and studying business, I just hate being lied to, because when you lie on the numbers, you can't really get things done. So that's what happened with Hillary's campaign. Her staff, was, they weren't, quote unquote, man up to tell her like, oh, the numbers aren't right here. You should go here or talk this. They were like laying back and, taking things easy, and they got it. Their I don't know if I can swear.
You got the hand slap.
Okay. They you saw what happened on election night. So
Right,
they got
right.
surprised. And so I looked at it, I was like, wow, the media really lied to us. I was mad about that because they were saying it was 94% chance, Hillary Clinton was going to take it. So I looked on it and I was like, wow, I didn't really look on both sides of the story, but then I was like thinking, well, I don't want the president to fail. I don't want, Trump to fail. So I gave him a chance, and about 1 or 2 years in, that's kind of when I started getting into politics, when I actually saw that there was actually black people that supported him, with MAGA hats and all that, especially when I saw young black people at the Turning Point event. So I reached out to them, and we were talking.
So
more and more.
let me put a pause in here.
Anytime.
For anybody who just tuned in and you're listening, this is the situation. I'm Joel Ford, and we have OC, or Osiga is his first name, and he is here representing BLEXIT. And BLEXIT is the black exit from the Democratic Party. And so it is my pleasure to have you on the show, because I wanted to hear from what I would consider to be, and if you listen to his background, I would consider you to be an average, ordinary guy, right? but something happened to you personally or professionally that caused you to see things differently. And not only see things differently, dude, you have taken a major turn to not only be a Republican, support Republicans, but get involved with an organization that is trying to bring about leading more blacks away from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party. I can share with you right now. I got some people who are looking at this and people who will look at this later and said, that dude is crazy. What would you say to them?
I would say, like in an argument or when you're trying to see somebody siding things, it's always good to get both sides of the story. Like I always say, if you've ever been in an argument with somebody, or let's say you had a spouse, a wife or a husband, a boyfriend, girlfriend, and y'all arguing, if one person goes to tell somebody, that's all they take from it, and that builds a bias. You kind of say, and I would say just get both sides of the story, and that's the same situation with Democrats and Republicans. Now, if you've been voting Democrat, for like your whole life, and let's say you're not satisfied with what they're doing, or your taxes are going up. That's one argument that we make. Now, BLEXIT, the key thing with BLEXIT is we're not telling you who to vote for. Our goal is your vote should be earned. Nobody should be entitled to your vote.
Now, see, I didn't know that about BLEXIT, right? And so you're not telling people who to vote for. So what are you telling them?
We're telling them to get both sides of the story. We're telling them to give both sides a chance and listen to both sides. Don't let Democrats tell you what Republicans are. Don't let Republicans tell you what Democrats are. Here. Listen to both sides, vote your values, and choose from there. And don't just be a one, party voter for the rest of your life.
So share with us what your values are.
So my values are, as far as, saving money, financial literacy, being independent, thinking before, I do things. Also religious. I'm a Catholic, pro-life. Also, it's all like, just as far as
I know I'm firing a lot of questions at you.
Yeah, it's fine.
But let me give you a chance here.
Well, and this is the first time I've had an opportunity to have this conversation. You and I have some race conversations.
But let me interject right here. Let me see if I can do this. So Dan and I, Dan Barry, are you considered to be middle age? Or no, older?
I want to say I'm young, but at 54, I don't know many people that live to be 108, so I wouldn't say middle-aged either.
Dan is a 54-year-old white conservative from Union County. I am a 50-year-old black African-American Democrat. I would say to you, we have more in common than I do with some other people who are members of the Democratic Party. And I'm just going to name you three. I'm going to give you three examples. And so this is where I want to go with this tonight. I believe that we have our faith in common. Mm-hmm. I believe that we have our families in common. Mm-hmm. When I say our families in common, meaning that what I want for my family, I'm sure Dan Barry wants for his family. He wants a safe neighborhood for his family. He wants a high-performing neighborhood public school if he can get it. If he can't afford to send them to private. He also wants to have either a good paying job or a successful small business. Yep. So that's what I want for my family, that I know he wants for his family. Right. And so he also wants for his family the ability to do what? Go on a vacation every once in a while. So that is a point that we share in common. Yep. So we have our faith, we have our family in common, and then we also have our business in common. I'm a businessman. Dan is a businessman. So I'm self-employed, right? And so if I don't kill anything, guess what, Dan?
We don't eat.
I don't eat.
Yep.
And so we share those things. And so we can get a jumping point just off of that. But somewhere in our society, in our everyday going and getting, we're not supposed to be friends. We're not supposed to be able to get along. We're not supposed to be able to find things that we agree upon. And for me, that's the travesty, that's the downfall right now, in my opinion, where we want to focus on where we are divided on what we don't like, what we disagree on versus what we do agree on. Because at the end of the day, we live in one community, right? And so if something happens to his family down in Union County, even though I know I'm in Mecklenburg, like crime doesn't care where zip code is. We all should want to be safe. And so I just want to throw that out there for people who are listening, to let people know that we've got to figure this out together.
And you hit crime, and I was instantly went to opioid. It has no discrimination. It is everywhere. everybody knows somebody that's being impacted by the opioid crisis, and it's in our schools. And to the point about taking care of your children, having a wonderful home, knowing that your children are safe, that they're getting a good education. I'll add on to that, if your public school doesn't work, they're charter schools.
And by the way,
and the voucher program should.
I am a charter school advocate as a Democrat. My daughter goes to a public school. We'll talk about that on another segment.
But anyway, No.
But I'm just saying that's real. Don't put people in a box. Just like as an African American, people assuming that you're supposed to be a Democrat.
True.
We should not put you in a box. You are an independent thinker. You are a smart, intelligent man who was able to make up his own mind and his own decisions. What were you gonna say?
I was going to say I'm a homeschool advocate, but that's another conversation too. I like charter schools. I like the attempt, too as well, and private schools.
But the key here was you got to make that decision.
Choice. No. The key is choice.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Choice,
you made the
choice.
decision.
Yeah, I'm all for that. Yeah.
Based on your facts and circumstances and your value structure, how you want to raise your children and build your home and your family.
So I want to go back to something that you talked about on the opioid side, right? So my Democratic friends would look at that and they would give you a smirk. It's like, right? Because where were the Republicans during the crack epidemic, right? So during the crack era, there was this whole this tough get on crime thing, and so you were locking up a lot of brothers and sisters. And I'm talking about you specifically, but there was a movement, especially within some of the conservative Democrats. And let's be clear, where that crime bill came from. It came from Bill Clinton. All right, let's be clear: 3 strikes and you're out. So this is where we have to figure out how to bridge this divide. So you got a group of hurt African American Democrats who, when we see different, and again, you got to give public policy credit where credit is due. The Republican response to the opioid epidemic, which was predominantly impacting white Americans, right?
I'm listening.
Was not to send them to jail, but to go to treatment. And all I'm saying to you is, as Democrats, to your point earlier, you got to be smarter about who you're advocating for, who you're supporting, and the policies that they're advocating for. Because like I said, I placed the blame where the blame was due. That get tough on crime era came out of the Democratic era with Bill Clinton that locked up a lot of people. And so the things that you've been working on, the First Step Act, is looking to undo that, which is being done, which was pushed by whom?
It was bipartisan, but that's mainly Republicans and
I just threw him a softball, Dan, and he missed it. Trump.
Yeah.
So
he signed off on it. I don't want to be Trump here. I'm pro Trump as well.
Well, folks have been leaning on President Trump for reform in this, and you and I kind of dabbled on this before you got here. And one of the things we were talking about is talking about changing the human condition and education and improving your status. And we talked a little bit about jail to the point from the crime bill. Families were being destroyed because somebody sells a dime bag and ends up in jail. They can't get a job.
And they got a record.
And now they got a record, so they can't get a job. So what are we doing to fix that? And that's where, you and I have had this conversation.
Part of the program, it allows them to have a chance to have a job before they're let out into the world. So they're set up as employed. They have their their debit card or whatnot. So that's part of the program, and it kind of helps them afterwards. Like I know there's a part where all their rights to work are covered for about a year or a few months into their job. They ride back and forth. That's part of the First Step Act. They try and look into those things.
So I want to back him, if that's okay, Joel. And I'm sorry, it's your show. I'm interrupting you. I want to back you up from policy for a minute to BLEXIT.
Thanks.
And because I'm fascinated by it, and there's some bad language that I don't like, about leaving the Democratic plantation. You and I had this conversation. It makes me nuts. To our conversation earlier, words are like hammers, and and BLEXIT folks use those same words. But so when you started having this conversation about making independent choices, right? That's what you said. And I don't want. So if I mince words, you fix them, okay? I don't want somebody else telling me what to do. I want you to earn it. And, so how is that happening, and how are people receiving that message from you as you tell that?
So the beautiful thing about BLEXIT is like we're like a sponge. We absorb information and feedback almost like clockwork. Like even Candace herself, you know, if
And
we
you're
tell her
referring to
something,
Candace Owens.
yes, yeah. If we as a team, you know, we sit down, we're literally a team, and we listen to the criticism and all that, and like by next event we get better and better and better. So what we did to combat that is we don't say the Democratic plantation anymore. That's the trigger word that the press loves and the people love. That gets their attention. That just makes their attention span just focus on that.
That's a great
you know?
statement, a trigger
So,
word.
Yeah, so that's what it is when we say that's what it is.
Well,
and then,
in all fairness,
yeah,
let me
it's
interject
fair,
here.
yeah.
Candace Owens used that on purpose
Yeah.
to gain attention and notoriety.
and yeah, that's fine.
And let me say this, but a lot of people were attracted to it because that's
Yeah.
how a lot of people
Yeah.
felt.
Yeah, yeah.
And I understand how you feel about it, but
like
I'm
I
just
said,
saying.
Well, I'm not allowed.
Right.
I'm not allowed to have that feeling, but as you and I talked
No,
about
but
before.
I'm talking about African Americans
Yeah, I understand.
felt like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, I understand that.
So with that is we're talking about the Democratic plantation, which it is true. If you're leaving the Democratic plantation and you're saying I'm taking my vote, I'm taking my support elsewhere because the Democrat that we voted in or in certain areas of like our towns or politics didn't do what they were supposed to do, I'm taking my vote elsewhere. I'm not voting at all. You know, they didn't earn my vote. And then you're going to have a group of people say, what? You a traitor? You know, like I've gotten that all the time. You know, I get called, you know, Coon, Uncle Tom all the time. Like I've lost friends, you know, family members over that. It's really sad, you know. And then like I remember I tweeted against the $15 minimum wage. You know, after that,
We got through talking about that.
Yeah,
by the
yeah,
way.
I could go on for days about that. That's kind of senseless, you know. That puts small businesses out of business. But as far as that, the real point of BLEXIT is we want to, you know, we're not telling somebody who to vote for, like especially the Black community. We just want people to vote smarter. We want people to hold politicians accountable. If you look at blue or red or predominantly red areas, a politician, they know their district. They know that some districts, if it's a glass of water that's Democrat, they will win that district. If a glass of water will win over, you know, somebody who actually wants to do something just because they have that D beside their name. So what we want to do, we want to stop that habit. You know, we want somebody to, if they vote in somebody and that person does not make their lives better in the community, we want that politician to know that their vote, they might not get that job. They might not get reelected again. So what that does, it keeps them on their toes when they're representing their people. You know, it makes them actually get something done. Otherwise, they know they'll be gone. In districts that doesn't happen, they just do what they want, or they support another cause, or they focus on their big donors, and then it's just ongoing again until one day you have Baltimore, until you have California, you know, or until you have even parts of Mecklenburg County. I don't want to call it out yet.
No,
but
you
it's
can call
getting
it
there.
out.
It's getting there.
No, we know
You're
where.
late. We just talked about it.
We know where West Boulevard is. We know
Yeah.
where Freedom Drive is. We
Yeah.
know where Wilkinson Boulevard is.
Yeah,
We know where the hot spots are because they were in
So
the
you
district
know,
that I
yeah.
represented. So that's why I take it personal.
Yeah.
But let me say this. Let me slow you down real quick because you said something that was a trigger for me.
Okay.
You talked about your family, and you talked about how you. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I do want you to talk about the reaction that you've got from people who were family or people who are closest to you. Tell me how that made you feel, and without mentioning any names, what would you say to that family member or close friend that you said that you no longer have a relationship with because of your choice to do some things differently? And these are my words. When I hear you and when I look at you, I see a person who is trying to do some things differently to get a different result. It just happens to be BLEXIT. It may happen to be a Republican or the Republican Party. But what I hear from you is a concern for your community and to want to improve it.
Yep.
And there's more than one way to get something done. It doesn't have to be always a Democratic way or a Republican way. But I want you to talk to us. Talk to me about that response from the family member, how it made you feel, and then what would you say?
All right. So my immediate family, you know, they're with me. They're conservative mostly. You know, But as far as close friends, I went to school with friends that I grew up with. Some have disowned me. But what I really think when I really think about it is, you know, I'm kind of glad I got into, to be a conservative, to be in this movement, because, I got to see who my real friends are. I discovered that those aren't my real friends. And as far as, saying something to people who call me out, call me names, I don't really have much to say. I feel that they're a constituent. I just feel that they should, look at both sides of the story and just ask why, just ask why. And actually think about their community and things like that, and not get too emotional on things, because I always say, all because you're passionate about something doesn't mean that you're right, and let's listen to both sides of the story. At the end of the day, I'm not somebody who holds grudges, or, like I was about to, say, like, about, when people talk about, history of the parties and all that, I don't like to get into that, because, I'm more focused on today. I'm not, it's like most of the old folks, they're looking for revenge rather than to do something in the community. They want to say, oh, the Republicans did this in the back in the day, or Democrats did this in the back in the day. I'm not with all that. I wasn't even thought of in that time. Some of you and the old folks weren't even there around that time or whatever. And so, like, I'm more of which side has the best to offer, or which side sounds better. Like for example, I'm not a registered Republican. I'm unaffiliated, because both sides have to earn my vote. It's just that as a conservative, the Republicans are making a lot more sense. And especially like now that Democrats, they've gone too far left and radical, like they're doing things like, this the same bathroom things, the transgender. It's like the LGBT community is over the black community. The black community is kind of, pushed to the side a little bit by the Democratic Party. And all you have to is
That's important for
Yeah.
anybody who's listening to the show, because that's how you feel.
Yeah.
Right? And who is anybody to tell you how you feel is wrong?
Absolutely.
And so I've been a part of the Democratic Party all my life. And all I've ever tried to do was serve, right? I happened to be thrust into public life and then having the opportunity to serve in the General Assembly during a supermajority of Republicans who I found that I have a lot in common with. But when you come home back to certain parts of your district, I'm not supposed to publicly acknowledge that. I'm not supposed to be able to work with a Dan Berry or a Dan Bishop or Phil Berger. I'm looked at as a traitor and someone who is doing something wrong for trying to help somebody.
Yeah.
For a community that has a lot of needs and that is harder to serve. It amazes me how you have on especially, I'm talking about Democrats, I'm not going to talk about Republicans for the second, who know the needs of their constituents, but will still play political games, right? Yeah. I'm not asking you to sell out. I'm not asking you to roll over and to do everything. But you got some Democrats right now in Mecklenburg County and across this state who won't even have a conversation. And that to me is a challenge when you have a growing and dynamic state, and then you have so many issues and you have so many challenges. And so I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I want to thank you publicly for you being courageous enough to step out, do some things that are uncomfortable, but do some things that as I listen to you and I hear you, that you believe in. And so I commend you. And so I want to support you in your efforts to do what you think is right by your constituency and by your organization. And so as long as I have a platform here on the situation, you and the folks from BLEXIT are welcome. My Republican friends are welcome. My Democratic friends are welcome. Because if we're not in this to serve our fellow man and fellow women and human beings, then why are we doing it?
Absolutely. And absolutely. Well, thanks for your support. BLEXIT, we're fairly new. We're gonna have.
So how can people find you?
Oh yeah, Google us, BLEXIT, BLEXIT.com. There's a BLEXIT Foundation. It's just a Google away. You find us. We keep you updated on our events. You can follow us at BLEXIT NC on all platforms. We're there. Just Google us. We're all around. We'll probably be at somebody's door around Charlotte, advertising and, asking to come out to events.
So I'm going to ask you
And
this
also,
question. It's tongue in cheek, but
Yeah.
would you just say that this is a moment or a movement?
This is a movement, because even after Trump, we're still, BLEXIT will still be going on. We're still going to be talking, about different, sides, because this is the first time when somebody goes to a BLEXIT event, it's their first time getting the other side of like a conservative story or another viewpoint, to think that, to way to think or, way to vote. And the great thing about it is, even if you leave there not convinced and you still are a Democrat, we're not mad at you. We're happy that you looked at both sides of the story, looked at what each side had to say, and you decided for yourself. That's what it's all about.
So do you guys meet on a regular basis here locally?
We will start to. We right now it's just a team. We meet individually ourselves. Sometimes we're affiliated, like we're at gun shows at times. We're at the Mecklenburg Black Republicans group sometimes, which actually meeting tonight. And we're at different events, but we're going to be more in the community, doing things more in the community. So you'll hear from us more, especially come, next year, January, February time, when we have our actual BLEXIT, North Carolina and Charlotte.
And
event.
if people want to help you, what do they need to do?
Oh, just reach out to us, Pierre, me, and also our new state fundraising director, Brandon Pierce.
Oh, I know Brandon.
Yeah, we all do.
He's
yeah.
a great guy. He really is.
He's a really
So
great
I got
guy,
a question online for you, and the question is, ask him about his views on undocumented immigration.
That's a great
coming from an immigrant family.
Yeah, that's a great one. All right, so I love that. That's my favorite one. So this is the thing. No immigrant will advise somebody to come into a country illegally.
Hold up. Say that again and slow down.
No immigrant would advise somebody to come into a country illegally. Any country. All countries have borders. All countries have customs. Most people that try to get emotional on immigration, especially the black community, they don't even have a passport. They don't even know that every country has a border, and that as far as, if you're going, let's say the Southern brother and you're undocumented. And by the way, there's a difference between being an undocumented immigrant and somebody who overstayed your visa. If you overstayed your visa, you have, at least you're documented at least, But if you're an illegal immigrant, you're an alien. They don't know who you are. You don't pay taxes, and if you go to the hospital, all kinds of things like that. Now, the real way to solve this is not, boo-hoo, the border and children, all that. It's actually calling for immigration reform and going to the Senate and not blaming, the president. The president's job is to uphold the law. It's not you take that up with Nancy Pelosi, who's not really doing anything. Take that up with her, as far as that. If you want laws to change about that, if you want something radical like open borders, go to the Senate.
And so the Democrats would say to you, and they push back and say, well, you tell Mitch McConnell to pass immigration reform.
Oh, wow. Well, okay, then y'all work on that. I'm for immigration reform. I'm for, mainly skill and merit. I'm for skill and merit, and maybe have a dash of the lottery, which I don't completely agree with, Trump taking away, but I understand the skill and merit is important. And any country wants the best to come into its country, and any country, if you try and cross Canada illegally, see what happens. They'll detain you too as well. Now, as far as them talking, it's just to get you emotionally riled up. The wall is needed. Let's face it, it is needed. As far as that, because there's drug trafficking coming through there, sex trafficking, all kinds of crimes as well. It's to just weed it out, and nobody should come through. That's a crime, crossing the border. I just don't understand how.
So those folks who are just now tuning in and listening, this is The Situation. I'm Joel Ford, and this is Osiga. This is my good friend Dan Barry, and we're talking to one of the local leaders of the BLEXIT movement. And we've just been talking about immigration reform. And here is a African American who is from an immigrant family. With what I interpret and what I hear from you, what I heard from him, Dan, he believes in laws. He believes in following the ports of entry. He believes in immigration reform, but he also believing that you should come in the country the right way.
Yeah.
I believe that there are more Americans, Republicans and Democrats, who think that is reasonable and that's okay.
Yeah. Obama thought the same as well.
and Clinton
Yeah,
and Reagan
everybody.
and
So
Bush.
until Trump came in, and it's a thing of politics right now to bash him, and the Democrats, they're just riding the wave right now of saying, oh, we're pro immigration and whatnot, and we want them here because Trump is actually telling the truth, and like as a president, he's upholding that law, but Trump, everything that Trump does, they make it unpopular. They make it like a bad thing, a cruel thing. And then they spread the rumors like, oh, he's putting kids in cages when it's being, you're being detained, just like a prison or a jail at night on a Saturday night. It's going to be full, in the detention centers and whatnot. But,
and let me add on to that, because when we start talking about this issue, it's a trigger on both sides, and it's been weaponized, as you and I talked about something the other day. When a parent has a minor child with them and they break the law, the parent is separated from the child.
Yeah.
The chairman of the board of Blue Cross was separated from his child when he got a DUI on I-85, and they took the kid and he went to jail. And we have families crossing the border illegally, and they separate the parent from the child until their return. And we have to maintain civility in that process. But the process exists for a reason, and that's to protect the interest of, we can talk about the nuclear family, but if mom and dad were so serious about keeping that family together and not putting the family in harm's way, they would have never broken the law. They would have never, in the case of the example I used, he wouldn't have had too much to drink driving up I-85. It's easy. Obey the law.
But it's amazing to me how it gets politicized and gets perverted as a bad thing in terms of what we as Americans go through when we get arrested with a child. And so somehow or another, when they're separating children from adults at the border, that just became the worst thing that could ever happen to anybody. But to your point,
they got more rights than we got.
To your point, what happens when we as Americans get in trouble with the law? So, but that's where we get sideways, and in my opinion, get distracted, because we do need to have border security. And I'm a firm believer as a Democrat, and maybe I got people right now who still want to try to kick me out of the party, and maybe I'll voluntarily go. But we need to know.
We have a home for you.
We need to know who's in our country. That to me is only reasonable and right. And so when we talk about immigration and immigration reform, I don't think that the average person, especially, and I'm talking to you now, the average black person understands the impact that that's having on our community as it relates to taking away resources. Where do illegal immigrants, where do those who are undocumented go for affordable housing, right? Education, jobs, healthcare. And so we can be a welcoming city and a country, but I believe that people, just like if you go to France or if you go to Canada, you need to do it the right way.
Absolutely. And also, nobody ever, people are so, stuck on like this, let's say the emotions, and saying like children died in custody, which is not true. I mean, anybody who has little children know that, a short trip with them, if you don't have food and drink or something to entertain them, they're going to be cranky, and it's not going to go well. Now imagine walking thousands of miles like you're Moses or on a pilgrimage, and then you get to the border. Everybody's going to be exhausted. Somebody's going to be sick, especially a little child. And then let's say that child, they take him into custody, and somebody, that child passes away. Then they're going to be like, oh, he died in custody. When really custody gave him his first meal in that thousands of miles. So custody actually probably even saved some of the kids' lives. Is getting there, because if they pass the border, then that's more walking until they find somewhere or whatnot. And also, besides that fact, nobody ever thinks that illegal immigration it hurts the immigrant, because if you come in, that's the wrong foot to start off on to your American dream, starting off as a criminal, because you can't get a license unless you make it to New York.
That's one way to put it.
You can't.
Woo!
You can't. You're not paying taxes when you go. You can't get loans and stuff like that. You're hiding all your life.
You
so
are.
Somebody can take advantage of you, and
And they do.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And then also as well, you don't think in your everyday life. If you get like I was in an accident recently. What if an illegal immigrant crashes into you? no insurance, no nothing. Even if they don't run, even if they just stay there.
And a lot of them run.
Yeah, well, even if they don't run, there's no insurance with them. You have to.
And that's why we have the uninsured motorist pool in North Carolina.
Congrats,
we're insurance guys,
Yeah,
so we
yeah.
can fill you in on that. But it's
but
you're exactly right.
Guess what? Our tax dollars go to that. Tax goes to that. Healthcare, as far as that, let's say let's say they have a child here, because they won't have insurance, and that's just more on our taxes. Plus, we're also filling in the void for, like, let's say other services other than that. But I could go on.
Look,
it's just not good for both sides.
I appreciate you
yeah.
making the trek all the way here. Hopefully, and this will be on later, and so hopefully you'll be able to share it and use it, and then share with people your story and your transformation as it relates to where you were to where you are now. And so I'm going to give each of you a final word as we get ready to close out this podcast. But before we do, I just personally want to say thank you for coming out this evening and sharing with us your story and about BLEXIT, and wanting to encourage you to on your journey of independence and then making decisions that are going to be best for you and your family. And Dan, my good friend, want to make sure I give you a final word as well, and to thank you for coming all the way from Union County to hang out with us this evening.
Your office is a block away from mine, and so it wasn't that far over here.
I enjoyed this dialogue, and I look forward to the future with whatever you're going to do, and hopefully we'll be able to find some projects that we can work on together and do some good to help improve our community.
Joel, thank you very much, and it's been just fantastic to get to reconnect with you after all this time, and especially in the last 6 weeks. I feel like we're doing something every other week right now. God knows what the plan is. My job is to be quiet and discern his will in my life and you in your life, and we will discern together as a community where we need to go. I have confidence, and I may be the only one that has confidence, that this blip in the road in Mecklenburg County, that some level of reasonableness will come back into our governance. I could say the exact same thing for the North Carolina General Assembly, and we together can say the same thing about the U.S. Congress. We have the consummate disruptor as President of the United States, who's made on the campaign trail a fantastic statement to communities of color and to those that have the feeling of being oppressed. He said, "What have they done for you? Just give me a chance." And they showed up in the polls and said, "We're going to give you a chance." Rural Democrats in North Carolina elected Donald Trump. Wherever you want to go in the country, I have the ability to say rural, old Southern Democrats elected Donald Trump president of the United States, and those were elected in North Carolina because the election was won here. And as you lead the BLEXIT crowd, there's a lesson in there. And I think what you and I have discussed is there has been a real, and I will agree it's a movement, not a moment, a real gut check by members of the Democratic Party and members of the Republican Party that said, I'm a Jim Martin Republican or I'm a Jim Hunt Democrat, and my party either moved too far right or too far left, and we together are going to bring back some level of normalcy. I will tell you, over that same time period, normalcy has moved to the right. This is a much more conservative state, and we're in a much more conservative country than we were in 1980. As I've told you, Ronald Reagan wouldn't make it out of a primary today because he wanted an assault weapons ban. So, it's different things that are happening to us, and moving forward, Joel Ford and Dan Berry need to have conversations. And you and I had a phone conversation the other day, and the reason this doesn't happen is fear. Is it about fear? a white guy and a black guy 20 years ago sitting down to have this conversation, would it have happened, Joel? We were in high school.
Yeah.
It would have been a challenge. But when we did, we learned that we agree on 90% of the stuff, and we hadn't figured out the 10% we don't agree on yet. And it's about what you said, family, faith, our communities, education. And if we stick on adding value and the providing resources to keep the nuclear family together and changing the human condition, it's home free. And I believe the individual should do that, not the government.
OC,
Sorry, I took long.
no, you're very good, and thank you. OC, let me give you a shouting part out. Go ahead.
I don't know what to say. Like I always say, make sure your vote is earned and not entitled to, and listen to both sides of the story. Appreciate you having us on the show, and by us, I mean BLEXIT. Definitely check us out, BLEXIT NC on all platforms. Also, BLEXIT Foundation, I believe .com or .org, but BLEXIT.com will do it. And then check us out. We have an event coming up, BLEXIT Charlotte. We'll have more information coming to everybody very soon. And we're here in North Carolina. And
so let me thank you both.
Thank you,
and
Joe.
let me say this to the members of the Democratic Party on a local, state, and federal level. If you are not careful in your platform, in selecting your public policy, that is going to be a benefit to the average American here in North Carolina and across this country, you are going to continue to lose young, bright African American men and women who the Democratic Party has relied on heavily for decades for support. You are going to lose. I have admonished the Democratic Party over my 6 years in the General Assembly not to take blacks for granted. And cycle after cycle, they continue to do that. There is enough of African Americans in the Democratic Party who have said, enough, we're not going to take it. And so the BLEXIT movement has decided to organize around it. All you have to do, Dan, is look at the numbers. More and more people are shifting toward what? Unaffiliated. And as more African Americans go unaffiliated and then take the bold step to go Republican during a environment in the era of Trump, Democrats, things are bad for our platform and for our party. And so I, as a Democrat, I've got some decisions that I need to make. And I know I've been accused of being a Republican, but I am an independent thinker first. I love my God. I love my family. And it is my responsibility to take care of my family. And so as we mix in public policy and how we help and shape do that, I just think it's important for us to do more listening within the Democratic Party and understanding that you do have to earn that vote, because if not, we saw what happened in 2016. A lot of African Americans stayed home. They didn't vote for Trump or Hillary. They stayed home. And so that is still a very realistic possibility if Democrats don't get it right. But look, the way my heart is, we have to stay involved, and we have to make sure that we're pushing those folks who are elected to do what's best for our community. Again, this has been The Situation. I'm Joel Ford, and it's been my pleasure to have y'all here this evening. God bless y'all, and hope to have y'all back real soon.
Thank you, Joel.
Thank y'all for coming out.
Yeah, appreciate it.